What's going on, Guardians? It's Tizzle here, and in this video I'm going to be giving you tips, tricks, and loadout suggestions so that you can easily solo flawless the Spire the Watcher dungeon. This is the last video in my series of updated dungeon guides. We have a long season still to go, so if you've ever wanted to solo a dungeon, now is the season to do it. If you've been checking out all the other videos, then thanks so much for the support. I hope they've been able to help some of you achieve a solo flawless. So my build suggestions will all be for Solar because Solar is absolutely OP this season. What with Revitalizing Blast giving you a 15% debuff on bosses and Radiant giving you 25% extra damage. Not to mention Solo Operative giving us a 15% buff to all our damage. It has truly never been easier to solo flawless this dungeon than it is this season. So this dungeon is already over a year old if you can believe it. It released December 9th, 2022, so it released before the changes to the mod system. And that is a big reason why it has never been easier to beat than it is now, but we will get to that in a bit. When this dungeon came out, I solo flawlessed it the first day on my first solo attempt. So now, I like to tinker and practice different loadouts before I do my solo flawless. That is what I did with Ghosts of the Deep and Warlord's Ruin. I still solo flawless them day one, but I was a lot more optimized. For Spire, I just did like 8 phases on the bosses and it took me like 2 hours. So I was sort of unfamiliar with the best strats for this dungeon and how to best optimize the run as a whole. But in making this guide, I tried out lots of different strategies, and I have lots of helpful advice to share with you as I learned a lot from doing my testing. And I'm glad I did, because I always found this dungeon boring and I never really liked it. I still think the main shoot the nodes mechanic is pretty basic and boring, but I know a lot more about the dungeon as a whole now, and as a result, it has made me like it more. So let's talk about it. The opening section has you connecting 4 circuits to open the hatch to drop down and start the traversal section. I don't really have much advice here. It's so early in the run that it doesn't really matter if you die here, so you can play a little aggressively. This one just takes some practice to learn where all the nodes and stuff are, and then the order that you like to go and shoot them. I definitely recommend healing grenades and Ember of Empyrean for extending your restoration, and an eager edge sword is nice as well. And then it is just a matter of shooting the nodes and killing enemies as you need to not die. For the most part, I just ignored the enemies. Onto the traversal section, there are some jumps here that can kill you. So just use jumps that you're most comfortable with. Stompies are really good to use on hunters as well, and I actually just shatter skated past this part, and that works really nice if you know how to do it. Titans could also sword skate with catapult lift and lion rampants if you know how to do that. And I didn't test it, but Warlock would probably be able to heat rises across with an eager edge sword and Icarus dashing. Again, I don't know for sure, but you could test it out. Or you can well skate, again if you are familiar with that. So all characters have a means of skipping this part, but even doing it legit, it's not bad at all. The first real encounter is just connecting more dots on 3 different levels. Again, it just comes down to familiarity and knowing where the nodes are that you have to shoot. Once again, I ignored the vast majority of ads and just shot the nodes, but if you want to take out the ads, that's fine too. Do what you're most comfortable with. Healing grenades are also nice in a pinch, but yeah, not a lot of advice to give here. So that brings us to the first boss, the Harpy boss, Akelous. I do have some advice here. So for getting to damage phase, I would always go the same route every time to get to damage. And I got very efficient at it after my time practicing DPS strats for this boss. So you kill a Minotaur to get the Arctrician buff. And then I would shoot all the nodes in the middle. The catwalks are labeled 1 to 4, so I would head to 2 and activate that circuit, and then to 3 and do that circuit, then 4, and I would always finish at 1. Once you activate so many nodes, goblins spawn in. Kill them. And when you activate a circuit, harpies will spawn in. Take all these ads out as you go. If you're fast enough, you'll never lose your Arctrician buff. And this is important, because then you never have to kill another Minotaur. Why is that important? Because as long as 1 Minotaur is up, more won't spawn in. But if you kill the second Minotaur, you get 2 Minotaurs to spawn in and some goblins. You do not want these ads up for DPS. So you will have to take the time to kill them. Also, they spawn opposite of each other. So if they spawn on catwalks 1 and 3 one time, they will spawn on catwalks 2 and 4 the next time. Again, this is important to know because you can avoid a spawn if you don't kill the second Minotaur. But if you do need to kill the second Minotaur for the Arctrician buff, then what you want to do is take out all the goblins and 1 Minotaur so that only 1 Minotaur is up. Again, this will help because you don't want ads up during DPS. So that is getting to DPS. But what do you actually use to deal damage to this boss? Well, like in my other guides, I suggest having a loadout for getting to DPS and a DPS loadout. The The loadout for getting to DPS needs a way to store armor charge and just have good general survivability. Then for your DPS loadout, you want 3 surge mods matching your heavy weapon damage type. If you are comfortable with all 3 characters, I highly suggest using Hunter for your solo flawless. I 3-phased the final boss with Star Eater Blade Barrage and Golden Gun Celestial Nighthawk, and the Harpy boss I could nearly 2-phase. If I had spike grenades on my GL, then I would be able to 2-phase. It's that close. So anyways, for Hunter, I used a Sunshot for ad clear with a God Roll and Sizer Trace Rifle for shooting the eyes before damage, and then a Celestial Golden Gun and the Cataphract GL3 with Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. The damage window is pretty small on this boss, so the burst DPS of this combo is amazing. However, if you don't have the Incisor, you can swap to a Akelous mini tool or something to shoot the eyes, and use the Seasonal Fusion Rifle Scatter Signal instead. This thing slaps with controlled burst. So yeah, on my Hunter, I had triple Strand Surge and would go to town with this DPS setup. It's awesome. But if you don't play Trials, then you won't have this grenade launcher. So the next best option is a Bait and Switch Apex Predator. You can pair this with Witherhoard or Izanagi's Burden. Then use a Solar Hand Cannon for ad clear and switch to a Solar SMG for DPS. I tried using Dragon's Breath to take out the eyes of the Harpy, thinking because it sort of explodes and spreads napalm, it might take out the eyes. But no, sadly, this does not work. Also, Dragon's Breath is not great for DPS in this boss fight in general. Leviathan's Breath is a great option for this boss. That with a Pyrogeld Titan Slam did over 1.75 million damage. So that is a good reliable option with great ammo economy. It will probably be a 4-phase. Sleeper Simulant did about 1.9 million with my Warlock, so an easy 4-phase and potentially a long shot for a 3-phase. Bait and Switch Cataclysmic and Witherhoard is a good option. Xenophage with Actium War Rig and the Throwing Hammer Super did 2 million damage, but this uses all your reserves, so ammo economy is kind of trash. And that is another thing, ammo can be hard to come by in this fight. You shoot a lot of Harpies and sometimes they drop bricks that just fall down into the abyss. So ammo economy is a consideration on this fight. Like my solo flawless, which is up on my channel by the way if you're interested, I could not get heavy to drop for my 2nd phase. Those things happen sometimes. So that is one bad thing about the grenade launcher strat. Rockets are pretty good for ammo if you run a scavenger on your loadout before DPS. So yeah, if you have the God Roll Cataphract, go with that. If you don't, Sleeper Simulant and Leviathan's Breath are wonderful options, and a Witherhoard and Bait and Switch Apex Predator is also pretty nice. So any of those would be my suggestions, it just depends what weapons you have access to. I should note that you want the Catalyst on Sleeper Simulant and Leviathan's Breath. For builds, you want Synthecep's Bonk Hammer for the Titan, and really whatever you want and are comfortable with on Warlock, and Celestial and a good ad clear build for the Hunter. Again, practice this run solo once to refine your strats. You will get super efficient at getting to DPS quickly and easily, and you can pick a strat that you like to run best. After this fight, we have a traversal section that requires killing ads and shooting nodes. I can't recommend Trinity Ghoul enough for this part, and then have an auto rifle for shooting the nodes. You then have to jump down and avoid the fan blades. I don't have a lot of advice for this, it is just a feel thing mostly. So again, you'll just have to practice it and get used to it. I just go with the blade, so as it passes under my feet, I fall down as soon as it goes by. That's what works best for me, and I never die here. At the very end, you have to shoot a node in the middle by a Hydra, and 4 nodes on the outside walls. Just make sure you don't run into the electricity in the middle. That is my biggest piece of advice, just watch out for that electricity. The boss fight is not too hard when you get the hang of it. You want to take out the Hydras ASAP and watch out for the supplicants. This boss fight really grew on me actually, and here's why. There's a skill gap to it. You can get to DPS extremely quickly if you know what you're doing, or it can take a very long time, and it teaches a very valuable skill in Destiny, enemy manipulation. The boss fight requires good movement. The boss's attacks are very easy to avoid, but they hurt like hell if they hit you. You also have to keep your head on a swivel for the supplicants, but the boss is easy to rotate around the arena, and you can get behind the pillars where the minotaurs spawn and just play cat and mouse with the boss. Again, this is fun for players who know how to manipulate enemies, but it's probably stressful for people who don't. So again, I stress to practice this boss. As you get familiar with the encounter, you will learn where every node on every circuit is. This is crucial because the boss is often firing at you while you're trying to shoot the nodes. This is where the manipulation comes into play. You can bait the boss to come outside and then hurry your ass into the back room and shoot the nodes before he gets there. This boss room can feel hectic at times, but trust me, it will get easier as you practice it. Soon you will be avoiding the boss and shooting all the nodes with ease. And that brings us to damage. On my Warlock, I used a Well of Radiance with Witherhoard and a bait and switch Apex Predator. It was nearly a 3-phase, and it could be a 3-phase with perfect DPS phases. But it's a comfortable 4-phase, which is not bad at all for this boss. Plus, you have a Well of Radiance for the whole damage phase, so it is probably the safest choice if you aren't good at avoiding the boss's attacks. On Hunter, I used Star Eater Blade Barrage with the same loadout as before with the Scatter Signal and the Cataphract GL, and was able to put up a 2.9 million damage phase and get a fairly easy 3-phase with this setup. On Titan, I tried Grand Overture and the Throwing Hammer Super. It was nearly a 4-phase. The boss had a tick of health left. I tried Xenophage as well, but I wasn't impressed. On my Hunter, I also used the Scatter Signal and Cataphract setup, but with Golden Gun with Celestial Nighthawk, and also got a 3-phase. But this boss isn't the easiest to hit the crit on. It is very doable, but I would say Star Eater Blade Barrage is a lot easier to hit the boss with. So do what you're most comfortable with. Overall, Hunter is by far the best for getting consistent 3-phases with, but Warlock is probably the easiest for survivability, or Bonk Titan. Again, it depends what you like and what you're used to. That is why I give a wide variety of options. One other thing I should note is that with the bait and switch Apex Predator, I was running triple charged up on the chest piece and Argent Ordnance from the artifact. You'll have less resistance, but Argent gives 15% extra damage on top of all the other buffs. But it consumes it when you shoot a rocket or reload. But with Reconstruction, it doesn't always use one up, so your armor charges easily last for a whole damage phase. And that is pretty much it on the 2024 version of how to solo flawless the Spire the Watcher dungeon. I hope you enjoyed. And if you've never solo flawless this dungeon and then you do and this guide helped, please let me know down in the comments. I make these videos for you and it makes me so happy when I hear that I helped someone. I have a ton of knowledge on this game and do lots of little things in my run that people may not notice. So this guide was to try and point out all those little details that make solo flawlessing this dungeon just a little bit easier. Anyways, thanks for watching if you're still here. I appreciate it a lot. If you want more helpful Destiny 2 content, then subscribing would mean a lot. And like the video if you learned something. Good luck solo flawlessing the Spire the Watcher dungeon, and take care.